Well, after more than a decade in the fashion industry, Ivanka Trump says that her namesake clothing line is shutting down. A spokesperson for the company said that the decision is not related to the brand's performance, but cited challenges to growth since the first daughter stepped away to become a senior White House advisor. In a statement, the first daughter said, quote, "My focus for the foreseeable future will be the work I am doing here in Washington." Elizabeth Segran is a staff writer at Fast Company who covers the fashion industry, and she joins me now via Skype. So, Elizabeth, talk to me a little bit about this, the timing of the announcement. Do we know why this was happening now?
Well, it's very curious, right? Because she's been in this position as White House advisor for 17 months now, and so she could have quit the company then. I mean, she could have closed it down back then, but she chose not to. So we actually think that sales actually did have a role to play here. We're seeing that actually in 2016 when she first, came into the spotlight for the political, for her political connections, the brand actually was doing very well. But over the last 12 months, some data is showing that sales online, at least, had tanked by 55%. So we think that this is much more about sales than anything else.
I got to say, I've seen some of her stuff. I've actually purchased some of her stuff. I think the designs are pretty cute and it's an affordable price range. But why do you think it is that just over the past few months you've seen this drastic decline? Can you tie it directly to the president's policies, or is that too simplistic?
No, I think that it's possible to do that. It's hard to make a direct connection because we don't actually know what the causality is. But there were a lot of things that were happening that were making Ivanka Trump's brand less palatable to a lot of women. One, there was this massive boycott that happened. It began around the time that President Trump's Access Hollywood tape came out, and he made lewd comments about grabbing women by their private parts. A massive boycott emerged called Grab Your Wallet. And that has gained a lot of traction online over the last 2 years. And we know that lots of women were paying attention to that. And the whole point of that movement was that if you disagreed with any of Trump's policies or had issues with his ethical violations, the appropriate response was to stop buying products from any of the Trump brands, including Ivanka Trump's brand. So it's possible that that had an impact on sales. But there were also a lot of reports about how terribly workers were being treated at Ivanka Trump brand factories. And so we know that in Indonesia, workers were paid so little that they had to actually live at the factory in dorms. And most of them didn't have enough money to see their children. So many couldn't afford the gas money to go see their children. In China, workers were paid below the minimum wage in China and had to work ridiculous overtime hours in order to meet the targets that the factory had laid out for them. So I think that some people were probably concerned about what was happening, in Trump factories.
Yeah, and we know that she's very conscious also about her image and about how she projects herself in front of the public. But I'm kind of curious also about, you write in your article that this is a win for those against fast fashion. Why is that?
Well, I think that what we're seeing is actually what was happening at Ivanka Trump's factories is not uncommon. This is actually a widespread problem throughout the fashion industry. We have gotten used to paying so little for the clothes that we buy. And the way that companies are able to create products at these low prices, including the Ivanka Trump brand, is to operate out of factories that don't pay workers very much and that often aren't regulated very well. And so in a lot of ways, all of this attention is being put on Ivanka Trump's brand because she's in the spotlight. But by us choosing not to purchase from her brand and her shutting down, we're actually seeing that our wallet activism, our decision to purchase products based on our values can have an impact. And so, the wider message here is that if you disagree with all of the companies that are behaving in a similar way and are treating workers in a similar way, you should stop buying products from those brands too, because over time we might find that change actually does happen.
It's interesting to hear you. I like the term that you used, wallet activism, and saying that this is bigger than just Ivanka Trump, but she's in the spotlight, so everyone's focusing on her. When you talk about women and the power of their pocketbooks, you say you don't have to purchase these and that's a way to fight back. But how do people find out and become educated over these fast fashion stores that many of us frequent because the price point is just so good?
Right. So I think that that's our job as journalists to continue drawing attention to that. And I think that this Ivanka Trump story is great because what happened was, journalists went to those factories. They went to ask those workers how they were being treated. But actually, we're seeing that when journalists go and report on these issues, change happens. Several years ago, a massive factory in Bangladesh collapsed, killing thousands of workers inside. And that story was reported on very heavily. That factory made clothes for a lot of brands that we're familiar with, including Benetton and Children's Place. And as a result of that, a lot of people started paying much closer attention. So I really think that this is about us as journalists going out there and telling these stories. Fashion journalists often don't get taken very seriously, but actually our job is very important right now. We need to go out there and be telling these stories.
Yeah, it is a serious situation and something that people don't pay a lot of attention to. Elizabeth, I want to ask you one final question. What happens to all that inventory? And also, do you think it's over for Ivanka Trump? Do you see her entering the fashion realm again?
Well, so to answer your first question, what we're seeing is that when a lot of companies can't sell this merchandise, they're burning it. So we know that H&M recently burned $4.3 billion worth of unsold merchandise. And that's actually, it's a terrible waste if you consider all of the effort that goes into making even one product, all of the human labor. Because they just can't sell it. I mean, they don't want to dilute the brand by just flooding the market with products that are like below market price. They don't want to sell shirts for 50 cents. And so burning them seems like the smartest solution. But if you think of both the environmental impact of what they're doing and just the sheer waste, it's terrible. So that's probably, what's going to happen. I mean, I think a lot of the clothes are going to end up in off-brand stores and sold at rock bottom prices, but anything else is going to get burned. But in response to your second question about what happens to her in the future, what we know is that the Trump family is very, very good at marketing, themselves and in using their name to sell products. That is what this family does best, I think. And so going forward, I would not be surprised if we see Ivanka Trump emerge again and sell us some, amazing shoes or jewelry in the future.
Elizabeth Segran, a great story in Fast Company on Ivanka Trump and her clothing line. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.